Joe, like the Transformers and He-Man alongside it, was one of my favorite cartoon shows to watch growing up as a child in the 1980s. I tuned in each week to watch and wonder as the all-American heroes foiled the evil machinations of Cobra. My brother and I collected all of our favorite characters, and we even begged our parents to get us the USS Flag playset for Christmas one year. When my dad allowed it, I spent just as many hours with the impossible-to-complete Epyx video game on his Commodore 64. When the Transformers started getting their own video games, courtesy of Atari, High Moon Studios, and Platinum Games, I held out some low-level hope that G.I. Joe would get something similar. The release of G.I. Joe Operation Blackout had me excited at first because it was the first modern game based on the property that wasn't connected to the live-action films of the mid-2000s. Seeing the old-school, cel-shaded renditions of Duke, Flint, my crush Lady J, my second crush Baroness, and my third crush Scarlet, and non-crush Storm Shadow gave me hope that finally, after all this time, G.I. Joe was getting the Transformers Devastation treatment. Those hopes were swiftly crushed as I endured a middling, half-baked video game that actively made a case against itself. Look, I understand that G.I. Joe is not high art. It was designed to sell toys of a paramilitary organization that willingly named one of its characters Snowjob without a hint of jest, so you know it was never really something to take seriously. But G.I. Joe is cool because of its silly, endearing cast of larger-than-life heroes and villains that shoot blue and red lasers at each other. So when I see that Operation Blackout barely puts in the effort to celebrate what made the cartoon so entertaining, I think I have the right to be upset. For Pete's sake, people, they don't even use the theme song. How can you make a game on G.I. Joe without using one of the most iconic theme songs ever written? The actual practice of playing Operation Blackout is antithetical to fun in every way because of its short, oft-duplicated gameplay loop that becomes a chore after the first hour, leaving little incentive to keep going. The story is about as Joe as you can get and is probably the best thing about this whole sad affair. Terrorist organization Cobra is up to their old tricks again in their quest to eliminate G.I. Joe, and this time they might actually succeed. After Cobra Commander's brazen attack on the supercarrier USS Flag leaves the Joes either incapacitated or missing in action, Cobra unleashes a planet-wide blackout weapon that renders their enemies defenseless against their march towards world domination. Using the White House as his base of operations, Cobra Commander orders his minions Destro, Baroness, Zartan, and Storm Shadow to scour the planet for their enemies lest they stumble upon their grand scheme. On the opposite side of the world, the surviving Joes Lady J, Duke, Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Sci-Fi, and Roadblock formulate a plan to fight back and loosen Cobra's reptilian grip by attacking their facilities and turning their robot army against them.
Lifeline was with me for a while, but he went scavenging for supplies and never came back.
In G.I. Joe Operation Blackout, you'll wage a guerrilla war against Cobra and, at the same time, help consolidate their power in a story that switches between two opposing forces. This seemed like a nifty idea at the start, but when there's no fundamental difference in gameplay between either side, coupled with a story that just doesn't really seem interesting, the side switching feels kind of pointless. As a third-person, over-the-shoulder run-and-gun shooter, you'll engage enemies and bosses while traversing large linear levels that feel empty and underutilized. Each mission has a primary objective to complete and optional secondary quests that are mostly in service to unlocking special videos from the main menu. Each mission has you lead a 2-member team of Joes to fight your way through Cobra bases and strongholds, and when you're given control of Cobra, you'll play some of those same levels in reverse. Such little nuance in the game's design makes for a largely tedious and boring adventure that has very little to show for itself. Operation Blackout attempts to incentivize exploration, what little there is of it, by squirreling away items in every level that unlock new weapon skins, comic book covers, and videos, but to be really blunt, I couldn't find the energy to care about finding any of them. Combat is awful, and because it is the front and center mechanic of Operation Blackout, that's a huge concern. The actual practice of moving your target reticle around and pumping androids full of bullets, not lasers, is off-putting thanks to a strange acceleration effect that makes getting a proper bead on a target harder than it should, especially when you're running around like a wild man. and you have to run around because even on its normal, the way it was meant to be played difficulty, enemies are blessed with supernatural aiming skills that whittle down your shields and health to such a degree that stopping to line up a shot could easily get you really hurt, if not killed. You'll often feel overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies that come at you during the arena engagements, and the game tries to help you mitigate that by partnering you with a teammate, either controlled by a friend or AI. If you absolutely have to play Operation Blackout, suffering together with a friend is far better than playing solo because the AI controlling your companion is about as useful as an Amish electrician. Characters get caught in the environment, they run in circles, they run in place, and while you're fighting for your life and bleeding through ammo at an alarming rate, they'll fire their weapons whenever they feel like it. I once got through an encounter where, I kid you not, my AI companion never fired a shot. In a fight against Cobra Commander, the AI controlling him decided that the best thing for the supreme leader of Cobra to do was run the entire perimeter of the room. I struggled with the boss later on in the story only because my partner didn't get through the door during an in-game engine cutscene in time for the encounter to start. The bland torture of the game's on-foot missions are somewhat alleviated through the use of vehicle-based sequences, but those are hardly worthy of much praise. Operation Blackout's faults come from an overall lack of creativity. Everything feels carbon copied, no matter which side you're on. Run to an objective marker, fight enemies along the way, trigger another objective marker that leads to an arena where you'll fight waves of enemies until the path opens up, reach the new objective, hit a switch or activate a panel, fight more enemies, sometimes for a timed duration, and maybe battle a boss before the mission ends. All characters control and animate exactly like each other, leaving skins and special abilities the only thing that makes them stand out. The absolute novelty of G.I. Joe is that everyone brings something to the table. You'd never know that in a game where everyone fires the same guns and has the same melee animations. Some of the special abilities the characters bring to the fight end up feeling pointless against an enemy that is smart enough to stay away from those that create an area of effect. The game isn't all that pretty to look at, and some of the character models are just plain ugly. There's a cel-shaded look to the character models that look fine in some, but I'm personally offended with just how bad Lady J appears. She deserves so much more than what she got. The audio mixing is all over the place with regular footfalls coming in quiet, but when you walk across metal surfaces, the effect is rather loud. I also really hated the sound effect used to indicate whenever your shield has been depleted, as it gives off a whiny, high-pitched klaxon sound that was really uncomfortable to my ears. The characters are voiced by a small group of voice actors, many of which are pulling double and sometimes triple duty. It's a shame that Game Mill Entertainment couldn't secure some of the surviving men and women who voiced some of the characters in the old cartoon show. Not that it would have helped to make the game any better. In a PlayStation blog post to promote the game, Iguana B declares G.I. Joe Operation Blackout to be a game for fans by fans. Speaking as a fan, that feels like an empty statement. I mean, I'm pleased that the characters are closer in appearance to the original cartoon despite the more contemporary high-tech setting, but the rest of the game just looks like a bland, generic, gun-centric action game. I really do hate being so overly negative about games, but the fact of the matter is, this is a one-trick pony that can't do its single trick effectively. The visuals are unimpressive, and combat is boring, tedious, and really doesn't make much sense from a narrative perspective. I mean, if the Joes are perfectly capable of turning the androids against Cobra whenever you're playing as the bad guys, why don't they just do that on a global scale and end this nonsense? At the end of the day, G.I. Joe Operation Blackout is hurt by a campaign that is neither fun nor a fitting tribute to the classic pop culture license. There's multiplayer, local only, but I strongly doubt people are going to stick around to try it out. What it all comes down to in the end is that $40 is far greater price to ask for this limping tribute to G.I. Joe.
Locked and loaded.
Dark Station gives G.I. Joe Operation Blackout 2 stars.